Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they're involved in. My guest today is a world-renowned self-defense instructor and fear management expert, has been a visible force in the martial arts, self-defense, defensive tactics, and combatives industry for over 4 decades. As the CEO of Blauer Tactical Systems, his organization has grown into one of the world's leading consulting companies, specializing in the research and development of performance psychology, personal safety and close-quarter tactics, and scenario-based training for defensive tactics, combatives, and professional self-defense instructors. He is best known for developing the world's first self-defense system based on the sciences of psychology and physiology, called the Spear System, as well as the world's first dynamic scenario training equipment called High Gear. His training systems and equipment are used by the military, law enforcement, martial artists, and citizens around the world. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Tony Blauer. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, Brian. And I was listening to that going, who's he talking about? This guy sounds interesting. And wow.
I've had a few guests. I've done their intro. And they're like, did I really do that? Are you sure?
Yeah. Well, it's, I turned 65 this year. So what is it? The layers, the compound interest, it all adds up. And suddenly, you got somebody reading and going, holy shit, I've been doing this a long time.
I get that. And I'm a few years behind you. I just turned 51 this year, but I get the same thing,
oh, nice.
Martial arts for 41 years and radio for like 35. And I hear stories. I'm like, really? I was there for that? But yeah, it's good. It's good.
It's
well,
wild.
I definitely want to get into your company, all that. But first, what we do with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know where that first interest in martial arts came from. What that first spark was that kicked off your martial arts journey.
Well, it's a fun one. It's an interesting story and concept. But I grew up in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And in the 60s, of course, we had black and white TV was becoming colorized. And everything was action shows, Manchurian Candidate, Batman, the Green Hornet, what was the Wild Wild West,
yep.
Streets of San Francisco, all of this stuff. And I'm like 6, 7 years old during this stuff. And it was that era where, the family would sit around the TV and I'd watch all of these action shows, and every one of them that I was attracted to had, some damsel in distress with some guy who knew how to fight, save the day, and got the woman, right? And this is like just this, I'm absorbing this like a sponge, and I'm going, oh, okay, you need to know how to fight because there's going to be a problem. And I just had a wild imagination. I love movies. I love TV. But I also felt like, and this is such a weird thing to talk about, mm-hmm. I was a natural athlete. I could play all sports. I was, at a young age, I started skiing when I was 3 years old.
Oh, cool.
We grew up in the East Coast of Canada, not big ski hills, but my parents were part of the National Ski Patrol. It was a real skiing family. And so I was on skis at 3 and ended up competing and racing and all sorts of stuff. But whether I played tennis, gymnastics, wrestling, skiing, I was always so scared of letting down the team or losing the game for the team. I just seemed to be obsessed with the dark, the negative instead of the positive. Almost like if we were going to go, you'd say, hey, Tony, let's go to the beach. And I go, oh, what if there's a riptide? What if there's a shark? As opposed to, let's go to the beach. My brain always went to the negative. I don't think most people talk about that. And you certainly didn't talk about it in the 60s or 70s. But I went and played all the sports and I did well. And I wasn't like the nerd, with the big thick glasses with the tape on it that didn't get picked. And I was the water boy. I was always there in the mix, but nobody knew like my inner life, man, not to get like too vulnerable and transparent about this. but I'd be like up at bat and people were going, come on, Blauer, let's go. We get a home run. And I'm going, oh my God, okay, don't screw up here. Don't strike out. So this fixation, if you will, on the negative and the fear kind of tainted everything I did. But I didn't realize like its impact everywhere.
Yeah.
It was in school, it was in dating, it was in everything that I did. So why that's important is depending on where you live and whether you're out in the real world, as you grow up, you get into little fights and little skirmishes, and you've got a little gang at school and a little clique, if you will. And so you start to experience elements of violence. And one day I was coming home from a pickup game of baseball at the elementary school. I was about 12 years old, and I was leaving and walking through the parking lot, and these two guys on the sidewalk, they're about 16 years old. There's a huge difference in size, power between, let's say, a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old, certainly back in 1972. And they wave at me and they go, hey, kid. And they wave. And I'm like thinking like this 12-year-old, oh, look, older kids want to say hi to me. And I kind of like run over into the lamb, into the wolves. And they grab me and one of them says, hey, when are you going to go to high school? There was a high school up the street, which they were walking to. I said, next year. They said, well, welcome to high school. And I'm like, what's going on? And the guy's got like me, like a full Nelson pin. And the other guy does a bolo punch.
Jeez.
And sucker punches me in the gut. Now, as this punch is going, everything goes into what's called tachypsyche. It's when your brain is processing stuff so quickly that the real world appears like it's moving in slow motion. And he's doing this bolo punch in slow motion. And as it hits me, Brian, I let out this like anticipation scream but it was like, I thought I was going to die, right? I was just like catastrophizing the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm there like, and I scream, and it hits me because this is like, for them, it's happening in real time. For me, it's in slow motion. And I scream really loud because I thought like this was my mind. This punch is going to hit me. And in the micro moment between the bolo punch and impact, I envisioned that his fist was going to break my rib was going to puncture my lung, and I was going to die.
Wow.
Like my brain just catastrophized this whole thing. Mm-hmm. So I screamed thinking I was about to die. As I screamed, this is such a fascinating recollection for me. As I screamed, I felt the guy holding me from behind, the guy who pinned my arms. I felt him loosen his grip at a behavioral level, like my tactile acuity at that level. And I'm 12, I'm not dead. And this guy loosened his grip because I screamed because he thought I was hurt. So I immediately screamed again. And this is like I'm telling this, the story takes like minutes to tell, but this happened in seconds.
Yeah.
And I scream again, and he lets go of me, and I fall to the ground. So I'm like on all fours on the ground, and I start gasping, going, and they freak and they run because they just caused an accident, right? Like, let's run. And as they turned the corner out of the parking lot of the school where they had jumped me, I saw them leave, and I just stood up. Nothing hurt me. There was no blood. My hair wasn't even messed. I fixed my shirt, which was a little pulled from when the guy had grabbed me and twisted me. I fixed it, and then I walked home. And I said to my dad, he goes, hey, how was baseball today? I said, I just got beaten up by two guys. And like, he's looking at me, no tear on my shirt, no blood, no black eye. And I don't know if I imagined this, but I imagine him saying something sarcastic like, was it a pillow fight? What do you mean you got in a fight by two guys? Like and I told him what happened. And he said, well, you need to learn how to defend yourself. Let's find you a self-defense school. There was only one martial arts school in 1972 near where I lived in Chamonix-Laval, outside of Montreal. And it was a Taekwondo school that had just opened up a few miles from the house. I went in there, and it was like stepping into the Holy Grail. Just this idea of learning to fight and going through the belts. And I was just so reverent, man. I was like, I signed up. I became a fanatic. I didn't go to the bathroom in the morning without punching I had a Maki water I built and put it under my bed. And before I get out of bed, I'd smash my hands so my knuckles, were all calloused. And then I'd do push-ups and kicks on the way to the bathroom, like before I took a leak. Just obsessed, man.
That's awesome.
And it was wild. 1970, 72. Then Bruce Lee dies, and that's the golden era, of course, of martial arts for our generation. And I didn't realize that I had been a Bruce Lee fan already, because I used to, binge watch The Green Hornet.
Yep.
And, I'd seen Marlowe, I don't know how they pronounce it. The James, that was the guy's name. He had a detective show that Bruce Lee did some cameos on.
Yeah.
And anyways, I get fully into Bruce Lee, totally absorbed and mesmerized by him. And, that was my whole teens from like 1973. I just trained all the time, had some skirmishes, had some incidents, and was always perplexed by the fact that my martial training didn't seem to manifest during these confrontations. Oh. Meaning the stances, the kicks, the control, the sparring type finesse that you would develop when you're, working with people who understand your style and your movements. And I remember one confrontation I had later on in high school when I was 15, turning 16, some kid, this guy named Lance, who thought I was one of the guys who had played a practical joke on him. Teacher went out of the room, and some kids started teasing Lance, and they pushed him down. And some kid had, when you push a kid over, like you give him a little shove, but somebody's on his hands and knees behind him. So the guy, just asshole shit that 15-year-olds do. But I was standing there when he fell, and he looked up, and I was laughing, because you're 15, you're laughing at this stupid. And he thought it was me, and he jumped up and he came at me. And as he lunged at me, my hands came out, fingers splayed outside 90, like I teach in Spear, pushing away, going, hey, no, it wasn't me, man. It wasn't me. So I'm trying to talk him down with what we now call a nonviolent posture, right? So think about, if we're truly trying to understand self-defense and teach self-defense, we should be morally, ethically, legally trying to avoid, defuse, and de-escalate everything. But when you look at conventional methods of self-defense, everything starts with your fighting stance, right? It's like, hey, here, get in this stance, get ready to go. And so, over the years later on, as I was organizing a system that I really would believe would help people, is I broke things down into 3 categories: detect, diffuse, defend. And these were kind of like, the pillar phases of the timeline of violence. If you looked at a 30,000 foot view, there'd be this detect phase where your situational awareness, your intuition was tracking something, going, something's off here. And then there'd be, oh man, I'm in a confined space, I can't avoid this. What were my verbal skills, and what was my body language during that period? Body language is 60% of communication. So if you're in like a pseudo boxing stance, or you're bladed sideways, getting ready to side kick somebody, or like most guys, you got, one hand is balled up, the other hand is pointed at somebody going, I don't want to fight. But your body language is saying, let's fight. So I was looking at all these behavioral things as I developed the program. But anyways, I jumped ahead 10 years. Back to when I was 15, 16, this kid Lance, he's coming at me, and I'm trying to diffuse this. And I got my back to the wall, and he's really in my face. He's angry. He's livid. And I could see his carotid in his neck is pulsing. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, this guy's he's going to freaking hit me. And I'm trying to diffuse it, but I can hear my Taekwondo instructor, Alex was his name, saying to the class, if I catch any of you fighting in the street, you're expelled from the school. The only thing I will tolerate is true self-defense, if you cannot avoid it. And I was so enamored and so in love with this idea of learning martial arts and being able to protect myself and my family that I was like, holy shit, like, this isn't self-defense. I mean, this is like, I was one of the assholes laughing at a guy who pushed a guy down, and how am I going to explain this to Alex? So I'm trying to diffuse this, not because I was terrified of Lance, but because I didn't want to get kicked out of school.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, he kind of shoves me. I'm back against the wall, and I hear in my head, he's too close to kick. He's too close to kick. He's too close to kick. Something was telling me this fight was going to happen no matter what I did. But I found myself there in what we now teach as a nonviolent posture, what we call the full negotiator. And it's got a Trojan horse element to it. We want whoever's looking at it to see, the Trojan horse. So we don't want to see soldiers inside. We don't want to see any readiness, because that undermines de-escalation. It might make for bad witnesses in the optics in society today, where every idiot has a smartphone.
Right.
And there I am, and all of a sudden, and this is something I've been telling people for almost 30 years now, from talking to victims of violence, every single one of them, Brian, said they knew something was wrong. Yeah. They knew there was going to be a fight. And so, we phrase it, we package that as every victim of violence who lived to tell the tale said they had a bad feeling before the event. So I felt something was off, and all of a sudden, like I just knew this guy was going to swing at me. And I decided to move preemptively, and I had my hands up and I threw one of the world's crappiest jabs ever. You know, Taekwondo is predominantly a kicking art, as you know, and most of your listeners know. And, you know, of course, we got back fist and reverse punch, but not a striking wasn't its thing. Kicking was Taekwondo's thing. Mm-hmm. And so I found it interesting after, like kind of introspecting, that I was standing against the wall, and that voice, he's too close to kick, was that his proximity had jammed my functional operating range that I was comfortable with, where my body had acclimated, kicking distance. And I didn't really know how to punch. So when I felt, shit, he's going to move first, I decided to preemptively move. I fired a shitty jab. As I hit him with the jab, and my intuition was right, he launched a big sucker punch. And it was kind of like an and one, like a boom. And it just like, so he was getting ready to go. It's just that my lead hand was closer than his John Wayne punch. Yeah. But as that punch came around, my body's nervous system, totally caught off guard, deployed the startle flinch that we now lovingly refer to as a body's biological airbag. Mm-hmm. Right. And so this airbag flinch, which is designed to cover your head, comes up, and his fist and forearm collide into my forearm, because my hands are up. If you can imagine, like flinching, like covering your head. Yep. Someone yells, "Look out," and those hands come up, and it bounces off my forearm, and he kind of like loses his balance right into this entanglement clinch. And I had wrestled competitively for years before Taekwondo, and I got him in an arm drag and did a hip throw and threw him to the ground. Nice. He fell to the ground, stunned. I grabbed him by the hair right away and yanked him and threw him into two desks. Wow. That stunned him. Then I got into like my Elvis Presley karate stance, and I yelled at him, "If you get up, I will kill you." And it came out of nowhere. Like it was just blood-curdling scripts. And you know, I'm 15 and a half, 16. It scared me what came out of me. It was just this rage of fear. And I had no idea what I did. And I tell people after, when years later, when I'd forgotten about that fight for about 10 years and then remembered it while I was putting together my self-defense system in the 80s, and it popped into my head. And I was like, holy shit, my body's intuition, what we call the human weapon system, was guiding me through that. It hit a nonviolent posture to de-escalate. This was congruent with everything I wanted, with not getting kicked out of the school. I was trying to diffuse it. My intuition said, this isn't working. You're going to have to do something. And I moved preemptively. It wasn't effective. And I got suckered, and I would have been caught had I been trying to do wax on, wax off. You know, I tell people your unconscious neuromuscular communication speed is way faster than your conscious, meaning there's nothing faster than startle flinch speed. If you know of a friend that's a paramedic, a firefighter, EMS, ask them where there's always trauma on people who don't wear seatbelts in car accidents. And they will tell you not only is there trauma to the head, but there's always trauma to the hands and the forearms. Yep. And what that means is, just imagine somebody hitting a tree or a wall or a car going through their windshield at whatever speed that is, that their hands still got up in front of their head before their head hit the glass. And so you see that in knife fights, you see that in gun fights, you see that in fist fights. And that's what happened to me. But I didn't know what was happening when it happened. I was just like, holy shit. Like, you know, it's pretty wild. So you know, I got jumped when I was 12. That was kind of an origin story. That fight when I was 15 was planting the seeds that I was later able to gratefully remember, because I went, well, here I am, obsessed with Bruce Lee, practicing Jeet Kune Do, obsessed doing Taekwondo 7 days a week, working out. And when it came time to fight, my body's intuition and natural improvisation had to come up with a solution. And that was really when I started to put together a system for humanity. I don't mean that to sound grandiose, but if you know my story, when I was 20, I got asked by a venture capitalist what I wanted to do. I was teaching this real estate mogul in Montreal. I was teaching his son, and he's watching me teach, and he says, man, he says, I've taken karate and judo and stuff. He said, what you're doing is different, man. And I said, thank you. His name was Ricky. I said, thank you, Rick. And he said, what are your plans for this? And I said, well, I'd like to make the world safer. And he goes, that's it? I said, yeah. He said, I'm going to put you in touch with a venture capitalist friend of mine, see if he can help you. And I went to this meeting, 1980, And he says, hey, Rick says you got the X factor. What is it? What's your plan? And I say, I think that there should be as many self-defense systems as there are people practicing self-defense. And he goes, whoa, what does that mean? I said, well, depending on your age and your experience, your body type, ectomorph, mesomorph, male, female, I got a bad hip, I got a bad hand, all of that will influence how and when and why you move. And that if we had a generic approach to self-defense, one that was built on true sciences of intuition, instincts, like the psychology of my body reading things and how it manages fear and how I think and decide, and then movement that was based on neurobiology, biology, kinesiology, and physics, that we would create like a generic approach to people protecting themselves. And there would be similarities in movement because of the way we all walk or push away danger, but when and how we moved, with what intentionality, the level of aggression, right? Like if you're 20, you got a big ego. When you're 30 and maybe, you just had a kid, you're still the guy driving going, what an asshole, but now your kid's in the back seat. So you're not stepping on the gas or you're not tailgating, right? So things change in your life that influence how and when you're doing stuff. So, that's obviously a kind of a cartoony example, but just, I'm 65 now. What I used to be able to do as a 30 or 40-year-old athlete is very different, but I still need to be thinking about, how do I detect and avoid, diffuse and de-escalate? And if I had to push myself, how do I defend myself? Even though I'm, it's 4 decades later.
Yeah. What a story. That's so crazy. What a story. So after that situation, then did you still continue to train at that Taekwondo school?
So after that fight, when I was 15 and a half, I was just getting why I remember the age, because I was just getting my learner's permit at 16. And I was obsessing about how shit my jab was. And I said, I got to learn how to box. And the only boxing school was like way too far for public transit. And so when I got my learner's permit, I could take the car and zip out there. And I started boxing. And what was interesting about that is I assumed that adding more tools to my toolbox was the answer, not understanding mindset and fear management, which now, years later, I realize if I was only going to work on one thing with everybody in the world to help them get through their next confrontation, which could be personal health, financial relationship, or, self-defense. And all of those I consider self-defense if you holistically redefine self-defense as protection of what's important to you, right? So someone trying to steal your business or steal your kid or ruin your relationship or, screw your reputation, that's all self-defense. Right. Where if you're a martial artist, we got a neuroassociation to automatically assume self-defense is somebody's trying to steal something from me or hurt. But I got heavy into boxing, and it wasn't until years later I realized that the more tools in the toolbox, the slower my reaction time, and that's a Hicks law factor. A lot of when you're young, you go, my style and my system, I've got 500 moves, and someone goes, I've got 501, and you're like, damn it, this guy must be better. But if you've got, I don't know if you're a shooter, but if you have 500 guns and someone's trying to break in your front door, your brain will look at your 500 guns. That's a silly example because people go, no, I've got an everyday carry or whatever. But it's the way the brain works. Unless you trained on that one, this is what I use for home defense, or this is what I use when I go out. Because I got a lot of friends who I got a bunch of weapons, but my concealed carry is for a couple of specific pistols, not my whole collection. Right. So I'm not going to accidentally grab the wrong gun if I'm out. But I'm using it as an example when your self-defense and immediate action is hand-to-hand. If you've got like 8 different things you can do when somebody throws a haymaker at you, your brain has to think and decide which is the optimum one. And that will take longer than if you had one move. That's just the science of decision-making. If I said, hey, hurry up, Brian, get dressed, we got to go. The old joke, like your buddy calls you and you go, which car? That line from the movie, whose car are we taking? Yeah. Well, if you've got 2 cars, you're not going to say, whose car are we taking? We're going to say, whose car are we taking? And I go, yours. And then you're going to say, which one? Mm-hmm. The Prius or the Mustang? I go, well, not the Prius, dude. Like, let's go. We got to go fast, right? But you follow what I'm saying is like, if you add, that frustrates people. I've a lot of haters in the martial art world that mock my use of Hicks law. But Hicks law's like it's not mine. Can I swear on your show?
Yeah.
Or is it
no,
okay?
That's good.
Good. Like, there's a lot of people out there, man, who don't really understand the difference between complex motor skill inspired self-defense from a martial art lens and true self-defense, managing violence.
Right.
And I've been studying violence for over 40 years. And I work with law enforcement and military and public safety professionals full-time since 1993. I've seen the result of the wrong program in place. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of nuances where a lot of people, I use the language like the martial art inspired self-defense protocol, meaning we're practicing these complex motor skills because we like this style or approach. And what you're practicing then is what to do when this happens, like a old school DOS, if then go to. When he does this, I'll do that. When I do my seminars around the world, like live or on Zoom live, and I got people there and I'll ask them, what do you do? A guy's got a knife. What if he's got in his left hand? What if he's got that? Everyone has an answer.
Yeah.
And then I explain to them, you have an answer because you have a theoretically memorized scenario that you've rehearsed in your mind. But if you look at the evidence of trained people who get attacked, and we see CCTV or smartphone capture, you don't see a lot of people looking cool in real fights and real violence. Right. In fact, you see the opposite. You see people scared, and very often, and I use an example, like I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. You see a cop getting his ass kicked. That cop had what we call ACP in our system. ACP stands for Awareness, Consent, Preparation. They knew who they were going to go talk to. They moved into the reactionary gap. They were in the process of maybe arresting somebody or interviewing somebody who is a person of interest, right? Mm-hmm. And they still couldn't make any of their training. And cops don't get trained well, so I'm not saying this guy was a wizard. But what I am talking about is a personality type that says, I'm going to move towards the danger on purpose. Most of us, if you and I go out and something kicks off, it's going to be a surprise. And the first place we're going to be hit and impacted is our emotional psychological centers.
Yeah.
When your brain goes, what the fuck is going on? Holy shit, right? Mm-hmm. And you're responding. And this is like really missing from conventional training, both professional training and recreational training. When I do these lectures and seminars for our law enforcement military, they're not getting it from their combatives or defensive tactics program. Those programs are still following, a 50-year-old block-based training model, like old school martial arts.
Yeah.
Stand in line, do this punch, do this block. Okay, I'm going to grab you like this, do this. I mean, the evidence is clear. It doesn't prepare you for sudden violence.
Right. I do love the way that you use the term toolbox, because I was lucky enough in my first 10 episodes, I interviewed a gentleman named James DeMille, who was one of Bruce Lee's original students back in like 1959. And he actually used that too. He said, Bruce Lee, he said, you'd learn a lot of techniques and a lot of stuff. But he said, once you got to a certain point, Bruce pulled you aside and said, it's time to fill your toolbox. And he would basically work with you on 4 to 5 specific techniques. He said, this is your toolbox. These are your go-to for real life situations. This is all we're focusing on now.
Nice.
Yeah. So as soon as you said that, that's what popped into my mind. So it's, hey, you grew up liking Bruce Lee a little bit. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
Same mindset there.
Yeah. Well, listen, there are universal truths, and there's a lot of people that, try to make things more efficient, and you make things more efficient by having less steps and removing, barriers for decision-making and obstacles where we vacillate. And I can tell you this, like, if I said, Brian, go get dressed really quick, we're going out someplace fancy. If all you have are white t-shirts and blue jeans and running shoes and just like a straightforward blazer, you're going to get dressed really quick. Mm-hmm. But if you've got like 9 different styles of shirts and dress pants and khakis and jeans and shorts, and you're going, should I wear this? Should I wear this? Should I wear this? And I'm giving these stupid examples because your brain isn't going to guess. It's going to decide. And the more Rolodexes it has to go through in your brain, like the longer it's going to take.
Right.
And there's a lecture I do to our tactical community called Violence Loves Speed. And if violence loves speed, the most important asset you can have is your own mind speed. Mm-hmm. It's not, I got 1,000 moves I can do. It's like, holy shit, get off the X now.
So
Yeah.
at what point you did Taekwondo, you did boxing, then at what point did you decide I'm going to create my own thing? I mean, you kind of already started formulating it in your mind, but when did you make that decision? Was it after you met with that venture capitalist and realized, hey, this person's going to back me, I'm going to do this? Or were you planning on it before that?
Before that, interestingly enough, and this is kind of weird, I was 15 years old. I just received, I was so in love with Bruce Lee that I would, there was a store in Chinatown that would bring in these magazines from Japan that were super high quality photography, just amazing. And there were shots you couldn't get in American magazines, like these wild, I don't know where they were getting them from, but super expensive. And they would come in like once a month. And I'd go down to Chinatown and see if any of the new mags were in. And then I just gotten these new ones and came back. And I'm on the floor trying to get the splits. I'm 15, 16, trying to get the splits, looking at Bruce Lee, reading, you remember Alex Ben Block's book, right? The Life and Times of Bruce Lee. I think that's what it was called. Reading all the stuff you can. And my mom says we had a generational family business that my grandfather had started.
Okay.
And my dad ran it now. And she said, hey, have you started thinking about what you're going to do? Are you going to go to school? You want to be a lawyer or a doctor? You're going to go into the family business? And I looked up at her and I said, Mom, school's not going to be that important. I'm going to be a famous martial artist like Bruce Lee. I'm going to develop my own self-defense system.
Nice.
I swear I said that on my mom's deathbed. She died in the middle of COVID and I had to say goodbye to her on fucking FaceTime. She brought that up, remembering that conversation and telling me how proud she was. She says, I still don't know what you do, but I'm so proud of you. It was funny, but it was that idea that I didn't have to go to school for what I wanted to do.
That's cool.
I didn't know why I knew that, man, but it's all I ever wanted to do. Now, I ended up going to school and I ended up, studying physical education. I was going to, get into PE and teach and go to teach at a school in the States. And then that went sideways at one point, and I ended up going to work in my family business, right? and did that. But while I was doing that, at no point had I stopped my own training. I was still obsessed. So this is kind of interesting. It's like all of a sudden life got in the way. That 15-year-old kid is suddenly 19 and he's working. I'm in the shipping department, starting at the bottom. And one of the other shippers, this guy, Bobby, I can't believe these names I'm remembering. Bobby Leger. I just remembered his last name. This is like 100 years ago. Bobby was like he was 28 years old. So he was like 9-10 years older than me. Street fighting background. But he'd always see me like throwing kicks at stuff, doing stuff. So one day he says, hey, we should spar. And sparring with him was like, he just grew up getting beaten up and fighting. It was, let's go light. And then it was 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So all of my main sparring was with a guy who just thought everything was a street fight, which taught me a lot about, taking a shot and getting punched, because I would get nailed. I was better than him as a tactical athlete, but it was always like, I don't know, for anyone listening to this, remember some of the old boxing greats like Duran and Carlos Monzon and like that era where like these guys, like these were 15-round wars. And that was what I was sparring with him all the time. There was never let's go light. That taught me a ton. And then one day, and this is another, I had like 3 very unique origin stories that kind of formed what became I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this global movement in the SPEAR system and the No Fear program. But it's 1980. I'm just finished unpacking this big box of clothing, and these boxes were massive. Like I would use them as like heavy bags to like destroy. We had to like cut them down and put them out in the garbage anyhow. But before we would do that, I'd like beat the shit out of it because they were such big boxes. You and I could stand inside of one.
Oh, wow.
And no one would see us. They were huge. But the cardboard was so thick because when they were filled with clothes for the shipping, they had to be that strong that you could literally punch these and kick these almost like Rocky's side of beef. That's how I envisioned them. When I'd empty them, I'd be punching holes in them, trying to punch a knuckle hole in it, hitting it fast and as hard as I could, jump back kicks and side kicks, and just trying to destroy it and flatten it because we had to take the X-Acto knife and cut it down anyhow. But, I'd get like a 20-minute workout every time we did a shipment, right? So I'm beating the shit out of a box one day, and I turn around, and my dad's best friend and top client, this guy Joey, is looking at me, and I've known him my whole life, like because he's my dad's best friend, and my dad's been in this generational business. this guy watched me grow up. So I've been to his, Sunday brunch, and I know his kids and all of that. And he's smiling at me. He says, you're starting to get really good at this karate stuff. And I said, oh, thanks, Joey. He goes, look, Mitch is one of his kids, his 15-year-old kids. He goes, Mitchie's having a bully situation at school, and I don't want him to be bullied. I want you to teach him some tricks, right? That old generation, they called like tricks, right? Like jiu-jitsu tricks. So I said, like, sure, I'd be happy to. He said, well, I don't want it to be a favor. I want you to teach him, like, for real. I want you to train him. I said, yeah, no problem. He goes, no, I want to pay you. And I go, oh, no. I mean, you're a friend of the family's. And if I know Mitchell, if he's being bullied in school, I'd be happy to work with him. He goes, no, Tony, I want you to take this very seriously. This is my son, my 15-year-old son. And I've been watching you and I know you. I'm going to pay you. It's 1980. I'm making $4.25 an hour.
Wow.
That was the minimum wage back then. And he says, I'm going to pay you. I want you to show up on time. I want the lesson prepared. And I want you to teach Mitch how to think and how to protect himself. I said, okay. I said, but I'm really uncomfortable taking. And he interrupts me and says, I'm going to pay you $20. And I do the math in my head. I go, that must be like 5 classes because I'm making $4 an hour. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, cool. He says, so I will pay you $20 each class. You teach Mitch. And my brain goes, what? $20 a class? Like in my head, I go, oh my God, I'm rich. I'm like, holy shit. I haven't even taught one class yet, Brian.
That's awesome.
And so I start teaching Mitchell. And this guy, obviously, he's a successful businessman. He's got a younger son, Mitch's brother, Stevie. Steve goes, how come Mitchell gets private self-defense lessons? I want them. Okay, you'll get them too, but it's got to be private because Mitch is being bullied. So literally a week later, I got 2 private lessons.
Wow.
2 hours, $40.
Nice.
We're working out in the driveway, and Derek, I can't remember all these names I'm remembering, man. Derek from across the street comes over and goes, what are you guys doing? And they're like, yeah, we're taking private fighting lessons. So Derek says to his parents, how come Stevie and Joey and Stevie and Mitch get private lessons? So their parents call me up. He books. His brother gets. Literally, Brian, I'm not joking. A month later, I had like 30 private lessons going.
Wow.
Because it was just like a wealthy neighborhood. All the kids knew each other. They were all cool. They were all like hockey players and skiers and good athletes. But I was only 20 and these kids were 15 and 16.
Yeah.
So although I was much older, they were like, it was like guinea pigs. Let's try this. Let's do this. Let's do that. They would do anything. And so like I did that for 5 years. I taught privately. I stayed with my father for 3 more years. So I'd work 40 hours a week for him. And every night and every Saturday and Sunday for 5 years, I taught 30, 40 privates a week.
Wow. That's crazy.
And it was never about the money, although I was like making good money. It was like, oh my God, I'm doing this. And then finally I was like, I do not need to work for my father. And it was hard because, it was a company business. And, the name of the company was our last name. And I just said, hey, I'm going to go follow my dream and do this. And I left in 1993. Okay. But the switch, up until then, I was teaching my interpretation of Jeet Kune Do. I was teaching boxing and dirty boxing, Taekwondo, wrestling. I was doing like a hybrid mixed martial art. And some people misunderstand this. This is like 13, 14 years before the first UFC.
Yeah.
But Kajikempo was like a MMA, right? Yeah. Like mixed martial art.
Exactly.
Bruce Lee was doing mixed martial art. The opening scene of Enter the Dragon is grappling and striking and kicking, and right. So there are other people doing stuff, but it was like that's where my head was at. I got that. That made sense. But I'm teaching it, and this is the big light bulb moment and why we've got hundreds of affiliates around the world. And our affiliates are people who are lifelong martial artists that listen to me talk. And there's 2 groups. There are people that go, who the fuck is this guy? And then there are people that go, holy shit, my intuition has told me there's something missing. I got these tools. I got these concepts. I got this gear. I got this training. I've been in these fights, but something was always off. Something was always missing. And you get through a lot of things in life where you go, man, I was lucky there. But you can't rely on luck. You need to fill the ice cube tray. What are the empty blocks in the ice cube tray that I'm missing here? And so in 1980, when I started this private training, I'm working with Mitch. That was the first student. Well, 3 months after teaching him, he gets into a physical confrontation with that bully. The bully up until then, Brian, had only been verbally abusing him at school. Mm-hmm. School wasn't doing anything about it. And that's where, his dad got me involved. And I would tell Mitchell, hey, no retroactive violence. You're not going to go physical. I said, but if this guy touches you, if he tries to harm you, now you have mine and your father's permission to protect yourself. Until then, since the school is doing jack shit, just avoid this guy. Stay the fuck away from him and, whatever. Well, one day Mitch is late for class. He's running through the hallway. The guy's sitting at the back against some lockers, sees Mitchell coming, sticks his foot out as he's going by and trips him. And Mitch goes flying, and he is 15 years old, embarrassed, turns red, angry. A bunch of kids are laughing that Mitchell, got tripped. And he's picking up his school books, and he's muttering under his breath. And he's just like 3 months of verbal abuse. He's like, you fucking asshole. And the guy gets up, and he goes, what did you just call me? And Mitchell says, you're such an asshole, man. Like, you've been bugging me since school started. I don't know what your fucking problem is. Just leave me the fuck alone. And the guy comes up to him, and he shoves him and says, what are you going to do about it? Let me pin that for a second and tell you how I learned about this fight. I come in for Mitchell's weekly private, and he's fuming in his room, like literally like the cartoon with the smoke coming out of his ears. Yep. He's like that. And I go, what's up? And he starts yelling at me. Fucking asshole, fucking man. I go, calm him down. I say, Mitchell, what the hell is going on? And he starts telling me the story, like panic racing. And I say, calm down. Start from the beginning. And he tells me what I told you up to that point, right? He pushed me. He said, what are you going to fucking do about it? And then Mitchell looks at me, and he's like, you can see him like he's like red and, breathing high in his chest. And he's like so angry still. This had just happened. And I go, then what happened? He goes, I grabbed him and I slammed him against the locker bank. And I said, don't ever fucking put your hands on me again. Right. And, as adults, we see the irony in that, right? Yeah. He grabbed, you touched him and he touched you, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And I go, and he looks at me and he goes, he dropped me with a left hook. And I say, Mitch, what do you mean he dropped you with a left hook? Why didn't you slip it? Why didn't you parry it? Why didn't you block it? We've been working on this type boxing stuff. And he pauses, Brian. He looks at me. He looks up and to the right to revisualize what was going on. And he says, well, I grabbed him with my left hand and pushed him up against the locker bank. So I was holding his shirt with my left hand, and I was holding my books that I picked up with my right arm. So if everyone listening to this can visualize, imagine if you had to get in a boxing match. You're in the middle of the ring, and your opponent's wearing a shirt, and he's got gloves on. And the referee said, I gave you instructions in the changing room. I want a good, clean fight. And then I say, Brian, Tony, grab your opponent's shirt with one hand and hold your school books with your other hand. And then I said, okay, go. Like, how long till you get punched in the face? Like right away.
Exactly.
Right? Both your blocking and striking tools are tied up. Mm-hmm. And I go, holy shit. And this is the most important part of the story. It was like, and I mean this, it was an awakening. It was like the god of self-defense hit me with a lightning bolt. And I said to myself, oh my God, we teach self-defense wrong. I'm 20 years old. It's 1980. And I was talking collectively about the world teaching self-defense. Meaning, we don't teach self-defense from the perspective of an authentic scenario. We teach self-defense through the lens of the martial art that we fell in love with.
Right.
Here's how judo would handle this. Here's how Krav would handle this. Here's how MMA would handle this. Here's how Hapkido would handle this. And what's wrong with that is that's a block-based training model, not a brain-based model. And I can get into more of that later. But what's happening now is the way you train that is you do the attack and the counter, and 90% of that modality works like that. So you're training your brain's anticipatory cells to wait for the attack, oftentimes a stylized attack, like the Jim Carrey video, don't attack me like that, attack me like this. Mm-hmm. Otherwise I can't do my counter. And all of this neuroscience is stuff that I've really spent decades trying to understand and find user-friendly ways to explain it and create drills around it. But in that moment, I didn't have the words, the language, some of the clarity I have now decades later. But I said, we teach self-defense wrong. And here's the first thing I did with this kid. I said, I'm so sorry. He goes, what are you sorry for? I messed up. I go, no, I didn't teach you about situational awareness. I didn't teach you about de-escalation. I didn't have that language then, but this is what I was explaining it. I didn't teach you. Like, as I was working this out in my mind that week, I called like a bunch of martial art friends of mine. I described the scenario and I said, what did my student do wrong? What would you have told him? Because I was on to something that I'd never read about or heard about. Remember, as a voracious reader, I had every martial art book I could. I was reading all these different styles and systems, right? I wanted to be the next Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And I remember in all the all the biographies on Bruce, they talked about his amazing martial art book collection. And I said, I got to be a voracious reader. And I'm thinking these ideas that I didn't see in any books, all this nuance, what I now call pre-fight. And there's all this training. Funny, years later, 1993, this very famous police expert witness, famous trainer, this guy, his name was Robert Willis. He saw me teaching. It was 1993, 94-ish. He said, you teach the 2 or 3 seconds before the fight everyone else teaches. And I love that. Like, that testimonial, that comment stuck. And so I asked these martial art friends of mine, what would you tell this guy? Because I wanted to see if anybody would think about pre-fight. And that became in the, the people that train with us now and get certified to bring our system to their schools. Mm-hmm. They'll know this expression: until you're emotionally and psychologically in control of yourself and physically dominating your opponent, do not try to access your complex motor skills. Meaning, in pre-fight, when I'm going, holy shit, and I got to recalibrate my brain, I need to rely on primal gross motor movement, not on fine or complex motor skills. And that's, if you said to me, name the biggest mistake most martial arts systems make when it comes to self-defense, mm-hmm. taking a complex motor skill and offering it up as the solution to an emotional, psychological problem.
Okay.
And it's why most good guys miss shots when they're in gunfights, mm-hmm. because they're emotionally, psychologically off balance while they're trying to pull the trigger. And that's a metaphor for why most people look shit in a hand-to-hand fight, because the emotional, psychological system. Remember, the mind navigates the body. There's no such thing as muscle memory. There's neural patterns. There's motor engrams. Your muscles don't have memory in the way that we want. When we want to believe in muscle memory, we just think that, my fist is going to punch you. No, I need to be connected to that. So, but that's a whole other rabbit hole. But anyways, I asked all these martial artists, what would you tell your student when this happened? All of them said something like, he didn't control range. He didn't control distance. He shouldn't have compromised his hands. They all said things that were about what I call D3, the fight. Mm-hmm. Nothing about D1 or D2, the pre-fight. And I knew I was onto something there because I asked, let's say, 6 or 7 people. They all had a physical answer that supported the move that their style, what I call the unconscious bias, which changes your situational awareness and it detracts you from being spontaneous because you're unconsciously or consciously trying to figure out how to make your favorite move work, as opposed to going, holy shit, I should get the fuck out of here, right? Yeah. Anyways, that was a fascinating moment, for me. And like I said, I was 20 years old going, holy shit. And I didn't have imposter syndrome, but I was really careful and self-conscious of the idea of why do I know this? And people are going to think I'm an idiot. And people still do to this day. Yeah. Now that I'm 65 and I'm considered like the OG pioneer of some of this stuff, there's still people going, what are you teaching people to flinch? I go, no, flinching's hardwired. I'm teaching you to embrace the flinch, to enjoy the flinch, to remember that you will only flinch if your situational awareness is caught off guard.
Right.
Why wouldn't you want to flinch? That's like saying, I don't want my airbag to deploy. You fucking do want your airbag to deploy. It has nothing to do with your car or your driving skill. It means you were in a car accident and you couldn't avoid it.
Right.
That's like saying, I was just sucker punched and I couldn't avoid it. You want the startle flinch there. You don't want to think wax on, wax off is going to do it.
So do you think when you're teaching students, is it easier for you to teach someone who has no martial arts training at all or someone who actually has training? Is it harder for them to unlearn stuff?
And it's a great question. The real answer is it depends.
Okay.
So I have a guy that just started with us, has been training for 25 years. He's angry that he didn't discover our stuff. He's got his own school here. He's part of an affiliation, a federation. He's one of the top people in Southern California. He heard about my system through a SWAT cop that I trained who's medically retired. So he starts off lurking and discovering it, but with that a typical ego, arms crossed. Yeah, I'm already an expert. And then he gets into it and he comes to a private training 3 times a year. I do this private training in my home for 10 people. And he signs up for that just to get a closer look. And it just so happened that the weekend we were doing it, there was a a black belt exam that he had to go participate at. And he went Saturday to do that. And Sunday he comes back. He says it was so surreal being there. I couldn't watch what they were doing during the self-defense stuff. I was embarrassed by it. And I could see he was flustered. And I said to him, listen, man, everything that I have in the world right now is because of my love of martial arts. So, and this is a big thing. A lot of people think I'm shitting on, denigrating other martial arts. I'm not. Mm-hmm. If you show me your black powder rifle and it's part of your collection, and I show you a modern M4, right, like a modern, long gun, if you go, oh, he's making fun of my black powder. No, I'm just showing you like for a modern fight, I would use this. But I love that gun. This is where it started. Yeah. The guy who built that was a genius, right? Yep. But the times have changed. So I said to this guy something like that. I said, respect where you came from, respect your instructors, everything. Nobody, I would like to believe this, no good conscientious instructor is going, I know all the parts that really matter. I'm going to leave those out and endanger my students. Right. So the hard thing is when ego and pride are involved, where my whole mind thing, I always had a growth mindset. I always wanted to be better. I would go, when I'd work with like tier 1 military teams, I'd say on a down day, hey, take me shooting. And they'd go, okay, where are you at? Where? I said, pretend I don't know anything. Start at the beginning. Because I wanted to learn, like I didn't know what somebody was going to say that was going to be a massive, like the light bulb in my head, just go boom and just get it. And that would change not just my confidence, but my competence. So you got to have an open mind and you got to be in it for the right reason. That's you want to be safer. You want your family safer. You want your students safer. So back to your question, a lot of it has to do with the personality and the wisdom. Okay. There are people listening to this now who hate me, going, who is this guy? This is bullshit. And then there are people who are listening going, they're on the fence. He uses big words. They sound interesting. I'm going to check it out. And then there are people who they knew something was always missing. So this guy that I'm talking about always knew something was missing. He had experienced real violence, but there was always this gap between what he was being taught to theoretically manage violence and what he had experienced. And you talk about the chaos, the fear, the off balance, energy, the dissonance. So, he's now, getting fully certified in our system and he's still teaching his stuff. But what I did with him is he was just in a class online. I teach online twice a week live, which is pretty wild. All these instructors from all over the world. And there was some old, I'll use the word muscle memory that I don't believe exists, but in a way that everyone listening understands, where there's movement protocols that I have my people do so that they can enhance the speed, what we call flinch speed, to use the body's natural cross-extensor speed wiring. And there's things that people who've done martial arts do when they're throwing elbows and strikes where they lock and load. If I said, I've never seen you move, Brian, but if I said throw a knee, you might throw, if you got a Kyokushinkai influence or a Thai boxing influence or whatever, there's a load people do with their legs and their hips and their pelvis where they chamber and then drive the kick in because they're driving so much power. In the street, that's very telegraphic. And it doesn't mean it doesn't work, but it's like do you remember Happy Gilmore? Oh, yeah. So you remember You're Gonna Die, Clown, right? That, he's got the putter. So, we all laugh at that scene. You're gonna die, clown. And I come and I do that giddy up step as I come in and smash it. That works in the movie. But if you pick up a baseball bat or a machete or a putter and you're 6 feet away from somebody and you go giddy up, hit, that gives the person time to move or engage. And so we're figuring out ways just to move on people way faster from the flinch, before the flinch, preemptively, protectively, whatever it is. So what we find, and this is a long answer, but this just happened today, where people from other systems have other, and it's not bad habits, other ways of doing things that are less in alignment with my research on neurobiology. And if you want to move faster, because violence loves speed, you need to explore this. But if somebody's coachable, like this kid, he's not a kid, he's got a bunch of kids, but he's way younger than me, so I'm going to call him a kid. This kid in the class, when I said you're telegraphing with your elbow here because you're loading with the power, but the power is going to come from the speed. That's part of the formula of power is speed. I need the speed there because violence loves speed. I want you moving fast. And then the rotational speed of your axis supporting the elbow is where you'll get your power. If you load the power first, like in the Happy Gilmore swing, you will fucking telegraph. Okay. And when you see it, it's too bad this is a radio only. But if you can visualize what I'm describing, one of them's going, "You're gonna die, clown," and one of them's like, "Oh, you just got hit. You don't know where it came from." But he got it, so he's working on it, right? So the fact that he's done 25 years of martial arts and he understands that, he'll move faster. Okay. Where I've also had people with no training pick up stuff and just, if they're good athletes, if they're coachable, there's another part. There's an initial phase in our training. We have a course called Be Your Own Bodyguard. And what we do to introduce the initial human weapon toolbox, we teach people movements. If everyone who's listening to this, if you're not driving, and even if you are driving, you could do this, but be careful. Put your hands on an imaginary steering wheel. So you get your hands on an imaginary steering wheel. You're sitting in the car at a light and you just realize you forgot to put your seatbelt on, and you're in a car where the seatbelt alarm doesn't go off. So just imagine that, right? And then you see a cop at the next corner, and then you go, "Shit, I don't have my seatbelt on." So if you're the driver with your right hand, you will very quickly shoot your hand and grab the seatbelt, right? And then, so what'll happen is your hand will move first, and then depending on the type of car you're in, how long your arms are, whether you're ectomorph, mesomorph, what type of body type, you're going to have to turn your head and turn your axis, turn your torso, but you move your hand first to grab the seatbelt. You're visualizing that? Oh yeah, definitely. Right? You don't move your hand. You don't like do a back fist to the passenger seat and then go, giddy up and like you don't swing and create momentum to grab your seatbelt. Right. So imagine here, hands on the steering wheel. There's a cop in front of you, and you want to sneakily get your seatbelt on really right away because you don't want a seatbelt ticket. And so you go, hand shoots across. In that moment, as that hand crosses your imaginary center line, that's the beginning of the most efficient elbow in the world. As your elbow's crossing the center line, meaning crossing the middle of the steering wheel, if I was sitting on your lap and I popped up and I said, "Hey, Brian, what are you doing?" Your elbow would smash into my face. You visualize that? Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, if you were turning your hips and lowering your center of gravity at the same time, because you weren't sitting in a car, that would be where your power would come from. So what I did there is two things. One is I gave more of a visual of what I was explaining 2 minutes ago, but this is also how I teach beginners, where what I would say is this. You've already done 10,000 reps of the most efficient horizontal elbow in the world if you've been driving as a passenger or a driver for any amount of time. Because every time you put your seatbelt on, you were doing an elbow. And every time you scratched your back, you're doing a vertical elbow. And every time you put your foot up on a chair to tie your shoe, you were running through the kinetic range of motion of a knee strike. Yep. And so I'm showing people like 8 or 9 movements that we already do in the real world that we've done before we decided to take self-defense. And that's where it emerges from. At that level, if somebody gets it, they are moving more free and naturally than the person who's done 25 years of martial arts, who's trying to load stuff, right? So, but it all comes down to coachability, but the movement protocol stays the same. Nice. So if someone wants to either just train with you or even possibly get certified, is there a spot on I'm trying to look on your website, is there a spot where they can find out where you have local people who are affiliated, or they can maybe have someone locally, or is online an option also? Yeah. So we've got all of the above. Okay. We have an amazing train the trainer program. Been doing it since the year 2000. There's 4 levels to it. It's an amazing community. It's all, what I love about it is it's all people like yourself or like myself, people who've been in the game for a long time who want something more laid back, more cerebral, more psychological, something that has more moral, ethical, legal elements and I'm referring to pure self-defense now. Yeah. So, there's no bowing, there's no one's, we're not wearing uniforms. It's just like, okay. And we do a lot of CCTV analysis where we analyze things and stuff like that. Nice. But we offer that online live. I've got a tactical library of over 800 classes on gun violence, knife violence, multiple assailants, courageous bystander, fear management, ground fighting. And 30% of them have videos that we break down and then show how some simple spear system would have changed the outcome for this unfortunate person in this video. That's so powerful. A lot of people don't think you can learn on Zoom. And I always joke that's because you're either not coachable or the person teaching has no clue what they're talking about. but you absolutely can. And I invite you to, check it out. We have a program called the Tactical Library, and my team should have sent you links to all this stuff.
Yep, I believe yes, they did. Yeah, and even stuff to say for to share for my listeners too once the episode comes out.
Yeah. So Tactical Library gets you access to over 800 classes, and that's like a monthly subscription to. I make a joke. It's like a library. You go in, something happens in the news, and you go in, and you just in the search function here, you go multiple assailant, gunfighting, fear management, and 20 classes come up, and suddenly you're just immersing yourself inside of that, and you will get safer immediately. If you want to do it live, there's a garage gym. I call it the Tactical Garage Gym. It's live with me twice a week. If you want to get certified, there's info. I'll send you another link with it might not have all of that stuff there.
Okay.
I write a lot. I write 3 times a week. Really, I think they're deep and important articles. I love writing.
Cool.
and sharing the things I've learned and experienced. So I've got a Substack feed where they're all housed, but I write and post live each week, and then that goes to Substack after as a repository.
Okay.
But there's everything. I mean, we've got, I've got over 40 videos, instructional videos you could buy. So there's ways to, if you're one of the 3 people, like this is bullshit, but you want to still check it out, or sitting on the fence and you want to check some shit out, or you go, man, this sounds amazing. I would tell you, like, go to our page and read the testimonials from people.
Yeah.
They're like real names and real testimonials. I don't like testimonial pages where it says, the person's first name. Best training ever, John, right?
Yeah.
These are real names. You can talk to the people. I think that's important. But I always tell people this, like, don't ask your buddy. If I asked you, Brian, hey, can you learn to defend yourself in one day? Your answer would probably be absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I have a course called Be Your Own Bodyguard. And in it, I tell people you'll be safer in a day. And what I do is I explain it like this. What if we taught self-defense initially like tactical first aid? When you learn how to stop the bleed, put on a tourniquet, clear someone's passageway, do mouth-to-mouth, you are developing and learning life-saving skills, and you may be able to save somebody's life.
Yep.
But you're not a paramedic, and you're sure as shit not a doctor.
Right.
So what happens is when I say I will teach you self-defense in a day, what happens is our mind that has watched the Bruce Lee movie, watched the John Wick movies, watched the Van Damme movies, goes bullshit, because we know what it takes to make that movie or to get the black belt. And we're accidentally confusing learning a martial art in a day, which you absolutely cannot do, and learning self-defense in a day. If I came to your home with a bunch of small, inert fire extinguishers for training and said, I'm going to teach you and your family how to put out fires in your house. I'm going to teach you where they start, what to think when you're in a fire so you don't freak out, and if you have time and space, how to put the fire out using this fire extinguisher. And then we're going to run some drills, right, with the inert fire extinguishers. And we did some scenarios. How long do you think it would take me to take you, let's say just you, and teach you basic fire safety in your home with some inert fire extinguishers to do some scenarios with? How many reps?
2 to 3 hours probably total.
2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
I promise you that after an hour, you'd be bored shitless going, okay, I get it.
Okay.
Don't put the fire extinguisher behind the furnace or behind the Christmas tree or behind the fireplace. Put it where I can grab it, away from where a fire might start. Got it. Spray like this, pull this pin. Got it. Okay. Get everyone out of the house. Okay. Got it. Like after an hour, you go, I got it. Right. Yeah. And I'm more making fun. You were probably right, 2 or 3 hours.
Oh yeah.
So in 2 hours, I could make you safer in protecting your home and your family from a fire. So to beat a dead horse and make this first aid example even more obvious, the fire extinguisher example and the first aid example I gave before, is I have spent a long time, and I've been teaching Be Your Own Bodyguard since the late 80s. It's not like some new gimmick. Right. Like I've always had this 1 and 2 day course. And I would tell people, I can teach you to use a fire extinguisher in a couple of hours, but it doesn't make you a firefighter. And I could teach you how to use a shotgun, and someone's trying to break themselves into your house. Here's where to stand, shoot through the door, give this verbal command first, call the police, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't mean you're a SWAT operator. Right. It just means that you're the first responder in your fight. The paramedic's not going to get there before you. You're already there. The fire department's not going to get there before you. You're there. The cops aren't going to get there when you dial 911. You're the first responder in your violent encounter. Mm-hmm. And so it's just giving people skills to buy time for their safety. And that's what it is. So when I say I can make you safer in a day, I'm going to teach you the 3Ds, detect, diffuse, defend. I'm going to give you an overview, what we call the timeline of violence, so you understand the big picture. What does the bad guy want? What does he not want? I'm going to give you an overview on the difference between the neurobiology in fear and the physiology of fear.
Okay.
You can't change your physiological response to fear. Oh my God, my palms are sweating. I'm breathing shallowly. Oh my God, I got butterflies in my stomach. That's all physiological changes. The only thing that matters in a crisis is what are you thinking? And that's where people freak out. So we created a whole program called No Fear, spelled KNOW, No Fear, and which is changing your relationship with fear, realizing that fear isn't the enemy. Fear is just energy. And if you can channel it, fear becomes fuel to support your movement. And then we do all primal gross motor movements. How do I convert the flinch? And when I flinch, people don't realize this. When you flinch, your hands come up to protect your head and push away danger. That locks and loads palm strikes, rakes, forearms, and elbows. So it's almost like you're the Edward fucking Scissorhands of self-defense when someone makes you flinch. Like all of these weapons are up in front of your head,
Yep.
Which they wouldn't be if you're in some other fighting stance.
That is cool.
Yeah,
definitely. It's very fascinating. So I know you do like a lot of seminars and so has that picked up again? I'm sure during COVID it slowed down a bit. Are you back to about a normal schedule for traveling and teaching right now?
Well, for me, I've kind of stopped teaching so much just because I did it for 30 fucking years.
Yeah.
Before it was cool. I got about 20 trainers that work for me now. They're all amazing. Most of them are retired law enforcement, military.
Nice.
But I still do teach. And we still do like annual camps, and we do my mission right now is to get as many conscientious, mature professionals to help make the world safer. My original vision from 1980.
That's cool.
And be part of that. And I don't care if you do Aikido, Wushu, Jiu-Jitsu, like everybody who's an affiliate of mine. Well, I shouldn't say like 99% of them have black belts in other martial arts, and just realize this neuroscience, the psychology, and the focus on scenarios was missing. They had the tools and they had the toolbox, but they didn't have the glue to connect it all.
Right.
So, that's the spear system became the fascia, the connective tissue that made that all happen.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So all your years of doing this, is there, you being a big Bruce Lee fan, Bruce was big on philosophy. So do you personally have like maybe one philosophy that's at the top of your list?
I mean, asked like that, I don't have an answer because it's super, like a philosophy about what, life, martial arts, training, spirituality. I mean, it's like if I said to you, what was Bruce Lee's main philosophy? Like, would you be able to answer that?
Be like water, I think was probably his main one.
So, but that was specific to adaptation.
True.
And he would always be referring to that, be like water, my friend. And that would be related to, using no way is the way, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to go. But if you kept on peeling his onion, he was talking about like his, ABCs of attack. If you said, does that apply to, you had a fight with your wife? He'd say, yeah, be like water, man, adapt. Right.
Yep.
The market just crashed and I lost this. Be like water. Right. So in that sense, like it was a universal philosophy. And so this little conversation helped emerge my philosophy. Mm-hmm. And when I explain the power of the human weapon system, I say that at a survival level, the human weapon system just wants to survive. If I cut you, your blood will coagulate. Try not to get infected. If I knock you out, your body's systems independent of you going, wake up, wake up, wake up, is going to try to revive you. We are human weapons. We don't want to fight. We don't want to fight. We don't want to die. We want to fight for our survival. And that would apply to business, to relationships. We don't let go. We don't like change. And so the spear system thesis statement was this, and this is still to this day. This was written in 1988. What does your body want to do prior to any training? Does that have a protective application? If so, why isn't that the nucleus of our self-defense method? Meaning the central nervous system should be the central nervous system of your system, the actual physical system that you're teaching people based on neurobiology, kinesiology, and psychology. So it impacts anybody's. Now, to make this be like water simple, why the SPEAR, which stands for spontaneous protection, enabling accelerated response. Again, SPEAR is an acronym, spontaneous protection, enabling accelerated response. When we unpack that, it goes like this. When a stimulus is introduced too quickly, you will flinch. Everybody flinches. Yep. It has nothing to do with whether you're trained or untrained. It's your nervous system going, fuck, spider web, snake. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
If it's introduced too quickly, your body goes, whoa, and you flinch. And it's always you recoil from danger. So what I tell people is when a stimulus is introduced too quickly, you will flinch, embrace the flinch, use the kinetic energy of the flinch to get back in the fight. Go from primal to protective to tactical. And that applies to you just got dumped, you just got divorced, you just fell in love, someone just stole from you in your business. You just got a business opportunity. You got bad news about, your tooth. You need root canal. You're going to flinch. You're going to go in the fear loop, convert the flinch, get tactical. What do I need to do next? And the same thing applies to self-defense. So there's my philosophy is everybody flinches. And if you want to get out of the fear loop, you got to convert fear to fuel and you got to get tactical.
I like it. Awesome. So what are your thoughts on something like the UFC and MMA? Is that something you're a fan of? Do you watch that?
Yeah, I not as much as I used to, but I'm friends with a lot of, in fact, it just popped up in memories yesterday was this picture. You should see me and Dana White.
Oh, okay.
And oh my God, you should see how young we look and how weird we look. But, I was at the very first UFC way before Dana White bought it when it was owned by SEG out of New York.
Yep.
Like I knew the guys back then. I was writing for a few magazines. I know a lot of fighters. I worked with a lot of fighters. So I enjoy it. I love it. I don't confuse. I wrote an article that was really controversial that helped me gain more traction with my haters. I wrote an article after the first UFC, and I said, look, although the guys are really fighting, it's not the same as a real fight.
Right. And
people fucking hated that. What are you talking about? Blauer saying we're not fighting. Let's see him in the octagon.
I think I remember that article, actually.
Yeah. I mean, and I said the next sentence was the only people that really fight are cops and soldiers and military, and they don't know if they're coming home tonight. There's no rule meeting. Yeah. There's no mouth guard. There's no cup. That people get offended by some of this stuff is beyond me. But you can lead a horse to water.
Yeah, definitely. So you talked about you're writing a lot, and I know you've worked on a couple books here and there. Any chance of us getting your autobiography? I mean, you have such an amazing story. I think it'd be cool for people to hear that.
I appreciate that. Me and the team are working on a bunch of things simultaneously. I had a guy just when COVID hit who approached me about finally writing my book and was interested in it. And I started doing these live classes, and I was doing them 5 days a week, Brian, for the first 2 years.
Wow.
And it was just crazy. But we recorded every one of them. Every single class is like a recorded history of my entire thinking about fear, thinking about violence, thinking about helping people. And we started transcribing those and creating manuals. We've produced probably about 10 amazing manuals for our instructor course out of those classes. But we're going to continue doing that and create a few books out of it. One called On No Fear, KNOW, one on the science and psychology of self-defense, another one on evidence-based scenario training. And out of that, like all the stories are in there. So it's just a question of getting that together. But having fun questions like you've asked helps people tell my story. And as cool as it would be to have a book, a coffee table book with what's left of my hair and in a picture, on it. The statistics of people finishing books is pretty dismal. So, maybe podcasts are the way to go. I don't know.
There you go. Well, speaking of fun questions, I got a few that we use to wrap up the show. And this one I'm really curious about because especially you being a kid of the 60s, I'm wondering what you're going to pick. But let's say you decided you were going to step into the octagon. You were going to fight in the UFC. What's your walk-up music going to be? What song's playing as you're taking that walk into the cage?
Oh my God. Wow. Hold on a second. I love music, and I have so many. Might be some AC/DC type tune. And I only say that because I used to work out so much, and I just had Back in Black just on repeat all the time at the gym, and I would hear Shook You All Night Long, and as soon as I hear that, I wanted to punch somebody. you know. And so it might be something like that. I don't know. Or maybe it'd be Elton John's I'm Still Standing. I don't
love it. I love Elton John. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Nice. So you got a big vinyl collection then? You said you love music?
I don't have a vinyl collection anymore, but I do love music, and I used to play in a band and play guitar, and so.
Nice. My 18-year-old daughter is a Beatles lover. That's her favorite group right now is the Beatles, and she has some Beatles vinyl that she's very proud of. So
that's crazy because my 22-year-old daughter is like your daughter. She's an old soul. She just listens to like I'll go. She's outside. A beautiful day in California here. Mm-hmm. She's outside listening to music, and it's like Fleetwood Mac and Led Zeppelin, and I'm like, holy shit. But I'll tell you what, like if there's good, I don't care when the music comes from. If it's good, I like it. I just appreciate musical talent.
Yeah. See, I'm like your daughter. I was born in 74, but I grew up listening to 50s and 60s. I mean, doo-wop is some of my favorite music. I like 80s stuff, 90s stuff too, and even some new stuff, but pop on an old, Dion and the Belmonts or something like that, or Buddy Holly. And I'm loving it.
That's funny. Cool.
All right. Who are 3, 4, 5 names you'd put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Well, obviously Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's an interesting question. I mean, it'd be Bruce. I mean, there's other people that obviously, like, you could say Funakoshi and Masoyama and Yip Man and, but I wasn't infatuated with any of them.
Right.
So, should they go on Mount Rushmore? I suppose they were iconic in their time, and Ueshiba and Funakoshi, and but they'd only be there because that'd be like saying give me 4 new presidents. You can't use the ones that were up there.
Yeah.
Right. So it'd be like, so I'm just making a list, but obviously, Bruce Lee had the greatest impact on our generation for sure.
Put just Bruce up there by himself. That'd be kind of cool.
I think so, or he'd be at the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
But in terms of people that truly influenced me, if it was just 4 fighters, I'd have Bruce Lee, Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard. Maybe I'd have to think about it, but just like
Muhammad Ali, he's been put up there quite a bit by people.
Yeah, and I loved Ali, but he wasn't my favorite boxer.
Yeah, mine was Tyson growing up. So,
I wouldn't even put Tyson up there for me. Like when people that really influenced my footwork, my striking, my slipping, and my love of boxing were Sugar Ray Robinson was my favorite,
nice.
And then Sugar Ray Leonard. I loved Hagler, and of course, Ali is Ali. It's like
okay, that's good. That's a good answer. All right. So do you have a favorite martial arts book? I know you said you have a huge library you love to read. Is there one that stands out?
I think the one that impacted me the most was, I just forgot his name, Living the Martial Way by Forrest
Morgan. I literally just interviewed him a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell him he that book I loved because there were parts of it that speaks to and spoke to the entitlement of the world and the disrespect that people have. Like when this guy who just discovered us said he couldn't stand being at his black belt test and he was embarrassed. I pulled him aside and said, don't do that, man. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't understand the gap in the gain if you hadn't done that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that you learn and there's a lot of value in there. And, he's going, but I want my instructor to see what I see here because we could help. And I go, well, you can't legislate that. And there's probably a good chance that he's going to be offended that I've had people start training with me and then their instructor finds out and gives them an ultimatum.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Where like if one of my students said, I'm going to start studying these 100 different martial arts, I'd say, good, go. I don't care. I know what I do.
Yeah.
And I've always said the spear is a bridge to your next move. And you can go to all these different places and you learn the next move. But if you don't have a pre-fight strategy, you might not get to the next move.
Right. No, I like it. I know one thing I told Forrest when I was talking to him is that I love that, his book came out in 92 and it's still, he's never updated. He's never done it still stands on its own 30 years later and people still love it. And I've had many guests mention that book. That's why I reached out to interview him. So
isn't that funny?
That says a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Now this one you may not have an answer for. Do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Did you ever get into any kind of gaming?
I did not.
Okay.
I'm a different generation. So I just never, I remember my son calling me one day, Dad, check out this catch. And he's playing Madden. So I come downstairs. He goes, you got to see this. I open his door. He goes, look at this catch. He does the replay. I go, you fucking called me down to show me a video game of a catch? I said, fuck outside and go catch a ball, a real ball. I just never cared.
That's funny. All right. How about favorite martial arts TV show?
I just finished watching Warrior.
Oh, so good. That's been picked a lot the last year. People love that show.
So I loved the fighting. I loved the choreography.
Yep.
And listen, if that had been made 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been so good, right?
Yeah.
What's happened with stunt work, stuntmen, and special effects is part of what made that so amazing.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fighting. I enjoyed the story. I loved the sets.
Yes.
The old town San Francisco.
I got to interview Brett Chan, the fight choreographer for that. And that was a fun conversation talking about that. Yeah. Really cool.
Amazing.
Yep. All right. How about favorite martial arts movie?
Geez, favorite movie. I don't have a favorite martial art movie.
Really?
I obviously listening to the, I had no clue how many times I've watched Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
Right. So, like listening to Layla Schifrin's, the soundtrack, when Bruce's, when the opening soundtrack, when they come in and they're panning the crowd of everyone doing horse stance and punching, and they cut the Bruce fighting, and like that created emblazoned something on my brain, right?
Yep.
Kind of like the AC/DC song. When I hear that, I flash back to, being, 15 years old, 1975, I think is when they released it. And going to like a midnight showing with my father because every showing was sold out, and he finally took me and just flashing back to that now. But there's way better martial art movies as far as I enjoyed a bunch of the John Wick movies. Yep. I really enjoy the Ong Bak series with Tony Jaa.
Yeah, very good. It picked some good ones there. All right, Final question. This one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've seen in your whole life, a favorite movie fight scene?
There was a movie from New Zealand called, I think it's called We Were Once Young. It was about domestic violence in New Zealand, and the fighting in it terrified me. It was so brutal but it always jumps out because there's this one fight scene where you pushed away from the screen into your chair to try and get further away from the violence.
Oh, wow.
Because it was happening so graphically and so quickly that like at a cellular, if you poke a single cell amoeba under a microscope with a pinprick, it'll pop away, right? So I tell people at a cellular level, we move away from danger. It's counterintuitive to move towards it. And you need to stress inoculate. You need to do the right type of training to override that. And so when this scene happened and the way they shot it, you guys can't see me, but it's like if I'm watching something on my screen right now, you find yourself pushing against the armrests, trying to get like deeper into your seat because you're like, fuck, I don't want to be near this. And it wasn't like an exotic fight scene.
Yeah.
It was just, it was probably like 10 seconds long, and it was just, fuck, holy shit, what did I just watch? But you just knew whoever choreographed that had done that to people. And just was like, there was nothing theatrical about it.
Yeah.
So
I found a 1994 one called Once Were Warriors. Is that it maybe?
From New Zealand?
Yeah, from New Zealand.
Let me do
a search and see, because it just kind of reading about it looks like it might be. It talks about domestic and gang violence.
Yeah, that's it. Once Were Warriors.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. It's on my list now.
Yeah, send me a message when you tragedy film. Yeah.
Okay, nice. I'll have to check that one out. Before I let you go, is there anything really quick that we forgot to ask, we forgot to mention, or just last parting words you want to mention? And I'll put links for everything your team sent me and anything else you want me to once the episode comes out. But anything we forgot?
No, man, it was a fun conversation. No, we talked about a lot of stuff. I don't outsource my social media.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you get an answer from me, it's from me.
Okay.
So if anyone is intrigued a little bit, sitting on the fence or intrigued, please do some research. Go to my bio on my page, go read some articles and check it out. My mission, 1980, right, was that 45 years ago?
Yeah.
When I got asked what I want to do, I said, I want to make the world safer, and I can't do that myself. So we're still looking for, and I've trained thousands and thousands of people. Most of my clients are law enforcement, military, but we've got hundreds of people who love martial arts who recognize that their students that face real violence, it's not Enter the Dragon violence. It's not Shaw Brothers kung fu movies, where it's not Warrior, where it's rival gangs fighting over opium, and we're just caught in the crossfire of hatchets.
Yeah.
Right. And so please research what we do. We never talked about my high gear. You talked about it in the intro, but the equipment that we do, and people can get certified without denouncing, their arts. I'm not interested in that. I'm like, add the spear system. It's like virus protection on your computer.
That's a good way to put it. Nice.
Yeah.
I like that.
So it adds a little protocol. It's like you got a 67 Chevy and or is there a 67 Mustang convertible, and you don't have an airbag. And I said, hey, I can install an airbag and make it safer. And you go, but I'm a good driver. And I go, the airbag's not for your good driving. The airbag's for the bad driver that hits into you. Yep. And that metaphor is the sudden violence that you might face.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm just glancing at some of your high gear stuff on your website. There's some good quality stuff there I can see. So I'll put a link for that too, and hopefully like I said, I knowing a lot of my listeners that I've had conversations with, I think a lot of them would definitely be interested and do more research and hopefully get you some more students out of it and get some certified. And I'll have to chat with you once we're done here and see if maybe there's anyone in my area that's certified or anything, and I can try to set something up. Or, there's 30 some martial arts schools in my area, so maybe I can get someone to bring in someone. So I'm in Moorhead, Minnesota, which is across the river from Fargo, North Dakota.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, but no, seriously, this has been so much fun. I've learned so much. I love hearing your story. You're great at telling it, which is good because not everyone's good at doing interviews. So this went very well. I could have probably talked to you another 2 hours easily, but definitely taken up enough of your time here. But seriously, it's been so much fun. I really enjoyed it, and I think the listeners will too.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity, Brian.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.